Hey guys, Zarbix here with another video for Warhammer Online, Return of Reckoning, the Age of Reckoning private server. This is part 5 in a series of the different archetypes in the game, the healers, the tanks, DPS, and melee. We already did the first one on order range DPS, the second video on destruction range DPS, third on order melee, fourth on Destra melee, and now we're at the fifth. We're at the healers, and we're going to start it off on order side. So let's go right to the back and take a look at the orders first of their 3 healers of the Archmage, the Rune Priest, and the Warrior Priest. So, Archmage is the elf healer. It is both a healing class. It can put out group heals, single target heals, self heals, but it also has a hybrid DPS magical damage spec. For gear, it wears robes, so light armor robes, and wields a 2-handed staff. What are the strengths of the Archmage? So, they are one of the best kiting classes in the game. They get access to a multitude of dot spells and on-the-move casting spells, on-the-move heals, and heal over time abilities. With their detons and ability to escape, they can kite you forever and just make you follow them across the battlefield. They have some very strong single-target heals as well. They have a few tactics and abilities that will boost healing when a target starts going low out of desperation. They can put out some pretty nice single-target heals. Their DPS spec is actually very solid. It's one of the better, if not one of the best, DPS hybrid builds in the game. It makes you a solo king, like one of the best soloing classes. So very, very strong option if you decide you want to go be a DPS class and you don't want to be a healer anymore. What are some of the weaknesses of the Archmage? So, low defenses. Having that light armor is a pain. Yes, you can kite, and yes, you can drag people across the battlefield, but eventually you're either going to hit a wall or you're going to, get caught, and when you get caught, then you get dead. They're kind of like a jack-of-all-trade healer. Like, they're not the best single-target healer. That's like the Rune Priest or the Zealot. They're not the best group healer, for sure. That's the Warrior Priest or the Disciple of Cain. So they kind of fit this middle ground where they have some good group heals and some good single-target heals, but they're not the master of either of those two things. Their mechanic is underutilized. So that's the last kind of weakness of the class, is that they have this interesting mechanic, and because of the way it's positioned in the game, it doesn't really help you. It doesn't really help you if you're a damage dealer. It doesn't really help you if you're a healer, and we'll go into that next. So what is their mechanic? High magic. Basically, the way this works is as you cast healing spells, you build up these points that increase the damage and power of your damaging spells. And when you cast damaging spells, you build up another set of points that build up the power of your healing abilities. So the intent is that you're going to be swapping out between damaging and healing abilities. You cast a heal, then you cast some damage. You cast 2 damage spells, then you cast some more healing. On paper, that sounds very strong, but in the game, it's hard to balance that out. If you're a pure healer, you don't want to stop healing your team for 10 seconds as you do damage. And if you're a damage dealer, typically if your target's almost dead, you're not going to swap to heals and let them get away. So it doesn't work too well in practice. Specializations, they have a Path of Isha, so that is their healing tree. That's where you're going to get your main healing spells, your funnels, and your buffs for your group. Very strong. Then you have your Path of the Assyrian. That is your damage line. That's where you're going to get majority of your magical damage spells that you'll use if you decide to go DPS Archmage and magical damage dealer. And finally, you have Path of All, which is your utility and kind of like support and debuff line. You get like a resist debuff in this line. You get a silence in this line. You get some group type damage in this line. It's where you're going to get toughness debuffs, things like that. What are some class defining abilities of the Archmage? So, Funnel Essence, this is like just like you have channel damage abilities in this game, this is a channel self-heal. So you're going to pop this on one of your friends, your allies, and it's going to heal them over time for big ticks as long as you don't break concentration. Searing Touch, this is like the opposite of that, the counterpart to it. Now you're attacking an enemy and you're going to maintain your focus, dealing massive damage every half second, every second to them, burning them down with that channel damage ability. And finally, you have Mistress of the Marsh, which is a puddle you can put down on the ground. It's a ground targeted AoE spell. You put it in an area, anyone who runs through it is going to have their initiative debuffed, and they're also going to have their run speed debuffed by 60%. Great for putting it in a funnel, great in open RVR, great escape tool for yourself or your team. Very, very solid. So what kind of play does the Archmage really excel at? So great soloer, whether it be as a healer or as a DPS Archmage, Laser Beam class. You are one of the best soloing classes in the game. You are very good in groups, even though you might not be the best healer out of all three, you are still very sought after. You're good in warbands, you're good in scenarios, you're pretty much, you're good at everything. Like, might not be the best, but a good Archmage is going to be a pick, regardless. So healer is a good choice if you want to do every kind of play in the game. All right, moving on, guys. Next we're going to go to the next one. Let's go back here. The next order healer we're going to talk about is the Rune Priest. So we're going to jump to the front. Rune Priest is the dwarf healer. It is also a healing class and has a magical damage dealing spec, though not quite as powerful as the DPS Archmage. Gearing, similar to the Archmage, wears a robe, light armor robe, has a two-handed staff weapon, same basic premise. What are their strengths? The Rune Priest is the best burst/solo healer in the game. They can put out huge healing numbers on one target, which is necessary in a game where kills are really based around who can burst who and how fast you can get damage out. You need a class like the Rune Priest who's able to keep people up in that situation. They're also a very good mobile healer, so they get one of the best, if not the best, flash heal in the game, which is a heal they can do on the move, no cooldown. Just spam that heal and keep people up with that while they're running. So they are a great mobile healer too. They have a lot of good support for their group, a lot of buffs for their teammates, a lot of self buffs, a lot of things they can put down on the ground to help buff their teammates. So they have a lot of support and utility to bring to the fight. What are some of the weaknesses of the dwarf? The dwarf Rune Priest. No real class mechanic. So if you're someone who wants to have some interesting build, like the Bright Wizard, or maybe like the I don't even know, like the Marauder, or something that you can play around with in the fight, Rune Priest doesn't really offer that. It's a very, very basic class. It's just like you heal and you buff people, and that's pretty much it. Could be boring for someone who wants a little bit more, something in their class to do. Their DPS build is not very strong. So when you play a Rune Priest, you're almost locking yourself into, I'm always going to be a healer. You can try going DPS spec and trying to do damage, but I feel like you're always going to end up being a little disappointed. If you do the same thing with any other ranged DPS, you do better. So not the best DPS build. But that's about it. I mean, they're not a very weak class. They have a lot of strengths for them. It's hard to even find a few weaknesses for the Rune Priest. They're just overall very, very solid. What about their mechanics? So it says rune crafting. Basically, Rune Priests can put out a lot of different kinds of buff. They can buff their allies with different stats like intellect and strength and maybe initiative or toughness. They can put runes down on the ground to buff their team's action points or give them healing over time. They can give big buffs in the fight to increase people's health. So all about just putting out different buffs, different support type abilities, and these different runes. What are their specializations? So we got the Path of Grungy. So this is they're kind of set up in a different way than other classes. Most other classes have like a single like a damage line, a heal line, and a support line. Rune Priest is built a little bit differently. It has a single target line, an AoE line, and then like a damage over time or heal over time line. So their Grungy line is direct damage and healing over time. Their Path of Ealia is healing and damage. Sorry, that was instant healing damage for the other one. Healing over time for Path of Ealia. And finally, Path of Grimnir is their area of effect over time. So each one of those trees is going to have some abilities that do damage, some abilities that do healing. One of them, like they're all going to be kind of in a theme. So like the third one will be, all of those spells will do damage over time or healing over time, things like that. What are the class-defining abilities of the Rune Priests? Oath Rune of Sanctuary. This is a buff they can put on themselves or others to increase their toughness, but also give them the opportunity to self-res for 10 minutes after they have the buff. So put this on your friend or yourself. You die in the fight, you'll get a little pop-up that tells you can self-res, get back into it. Very good for, clutching victory out of the jaws of defeat. When your team is going down, you die, but you pop back up when the team moves away from you, and you manage to get the fight back in hand. They have Grungy's Gift, which is their flash heal. So as we talked about earlier, no cooldown, instant spell. They can, on the move, start instantly healing everyone around them. Not everyone around them, but a single target around them, and keep healing as they go. Finally, you have Rune of Burning. This is similar to the Archmage damaging spell. They focus on a target and deal fire damage over time to that target as a channel. Can be broken, but also can put out a lot of damage over a relatively short amount of time. How does the Rune Priest play? pretty much everything. Just like the Archmage, they can do it all. They can be a soloer, they can be a group class, they can be a scenario class, a 6v6 class, a rank class, a warband class. They really can put themselves into any kind of play in this game. And if that's appealing to you, knowing that you're going to be sought after for everything, then Rune Priest is a pretty good choice for you. All right, moving on to the last of the bunch, probably maybe the strongest of the bunch is the Warrior Priest healer. So, Warrior Priest is a medium, is a healing class like we talked about, but it's also melee healing and shield class, and it's also a two-handed great weapon dealing class. So they're one of the few classes in the game that actually get 3 viable different specs, 3 completely different builds using 3 different weapon types, and they're very solid. What kind of gear do they use? They use they do medium robes like we just talked about. They have their hammer and book, their tome spec, that's their healing build. They have their hammer and shield, which is their melee healing, like offensive / defensive build. And then they have their two-handed great hammer, which is their offensive DPS build. What are the strengths of the Warrior Priest? Because of that medium robes, they are the tankiest healer. They are very tough to go down. They have a lot of health. They have a lot of armor. Not very easy to kill. Another strength, them multiple strong builds. You can play it as a healer, you can play it as a melee shield healer, or even you can try it as a DPS, and they all have a good deal amount of viability. So other classes don't really have that option. If you play a Bright Wizard, you're kind of stuck on the Bright Wizard doing damage. That's all you're going to do. The Warrior Priest offers a lot of build diversity and a lot of chances to play in different ways. They're an amazing group healer. Every group is going to want like a Warrior Priest or a Disciple of Cain. They put out some amazing group heals and group buffs. Very, very solid. What are the weaknesses of the Warrior Priest? Lower single target healing, so they don't have the healing output potential for a single target that maybe an Archmage or a Rune Priest does. They have a resource pool mechanic, so you have to kind of balance your action points and another pool of resources, which, you know, if you're a player that just doesn't want to be looking at a depleting bar and filling it back up all the time, that might sway you away from the class. Also, they have a lot of choices, so when you have more choices, that can be more frustrating from a player. You know, if you're making an Assault Shadow Warrior, you know what you're going to be doing with that class. You're going to be a melee damage dealer, and that's pretty much it. For the Warrior Priest, it gives you a lot of choices, and maybe too many choices for some players. What is their mechanic? Righteous Fury. Righteous Fury is that resource pool that we're talking about. As you use certain abilities, you'll build up your Righteous Fury, and then when you'll have other abilities that will expend that Righteous Fury. So you're going to be balancing that out during the fight as you cast abilities, some using action points, some using Righteous Fury, some building it to keep your team healed and increase your damage and whatever may have you. What are their specializations? Salvation is their heal line, so this is where you're going to get your group heal over time. So we're going to get your strong group healing and increase all your heals. Then you have your Path of Grace, which is your shield melee healing spec. This is where you're going to be strapping on a shield, getting right up and close and personal. Your damage that you do is going to be reflected back as healing for your team. And then finally, you have your Path of Wrath. This is your two-handed great weapon spec. This is where you're going to be kind of not really worrying too much about healing your team anymore. This is more about healing yourself a little bit, maybe a little bit your team, and doing damage. What are some of the class-defining abilities of the Warrior Priest? Divine Light, this is your group absorb shield, so you hit an ability, an instant cast ability, and everyone in your group gets an absorb shield, pretty strong. You have your Sigmar's Grace, which is a group health buff, so it's one of the only, if the only permanent group health buff in the game. They use this, everyone in your party health increases by about 800-900, and it stays there, for the duration of the fight. And finally, you have Hammer of Sigmar, which is 100% crit execute type ability. This is for their two-handed great weapon build. When a target is getting low, you swipe at them with your great hammer. It'll always have a critical strike, and it will do massive damage to get that killing blow. What kind of play can the Warrior Priest do? Just like the Rune Priest and similar to the Archmage, everything. A Warrior Priest can do everything. Solo, ranked scenarios, warbands, PvP, city sieges, forts. They can just do it all. Like they're sought after. Healers are always welcome and necessary in every type of play. So you play a Warrior Priest, a Rune Priest, or an Archmage, you know you're gonna never have any trouble for the most part finding a group. So that about sums it up, guys. The Warrior Priest, Archmage, and the Rune Priest. 3 very strong choices for order. 3 very strong healers. Next, we're going to go into the Destro healers in our next video, but that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you on the battlefield. Have a great day. Thanks for everything, guys.